So let's kick off. Welcome everybody. It's lovely to see so many of you. Thank you so much for spending the next hour or so, couple of hours with us this evening. As you all very well know, and I certainly haven't got to remind you, but just obviously to take note that we're all in week 14, 15 and 16, and just to hats off to us all really for living through something which is very it's been certainly had its trials and tribulations. So we're all in it together, and give yourselves a bit of a pat on the back for actually being here and taking part in this tonight. So as soon as lockdown hit, just instruction by the way, I'm Lynette. Tonight Sam and I will be looking after you guys. So if you have any questions, let us know. It feels a bit more informal, a bit more formal tonight because there's so many of you. So I've got to get my stuff together. So as you know, when COVID-19 hit, we in Action Duchenne watched developments incredibly closely, and we made sure that the resources we were using were directed to precisely the right place, and that right place was supporting families. So we turned on those expense, we diverted all of our operations to looking after you guys. We immediately developed a series of Duchenne webinars. We have regularly updated our COVID-19 page for Duchenne families, and that's received 35,000 unique page views so far, which is absolutely phenomenal. And that's been viewed across the globe. So the lovely Sam, who you can see on here tonight, has been contacting all of our families directly, and so far I think she's contacted just over 1,000, Sam? Is that right? Or are we heading up more towards the 1,500 now?
I'm closer to 1.5 now.
Very good. So if you've had a phone call with Sam, I hope you enjoyed it. If you need anything from us at all at any time, we absolutely are here for you. Please ask. We're all working full time through the lockdown with our families in tow, so we are here for you. So on to tonight's webinar. So this is the 18th webinar that Sam and I have brought to our Duchenne community, which we are very proud of. We've got lots more to come, so look out for more over the next few weeks. So Sam and I are both Duchenne parents. We are here to help you. We're not techie experts, we're not presentation experts, but we are kind of getting towards being a bit more expert in Duchenne, and we'll try our best to help you guys through these webinars. So I have got some questions already sent in from families, but please feel free at any time to pop your questions in the chat box. If you feel there's a question that's a bit more personal and you don't want it to be public knowledge or certainly to be recorded, please pop it in the chat box privately to myself or to Sam. We will be, Denise will be presenting a section, then we'll break for questions, and then we'll present another section. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of maintain a bit of fluidity, and it'll be a bit more informal as well. So Denise has also kindly offered to answer any questions which we were unable to answer fully for you this evening. So please pop those through to myself or Sam, and we'll compile a list for Denise. So this tonight is your opportunity to share your thoughts and experiences. I know we've got some superb experts on this call as well today, so I'm hoping to hear from you guys. So please don't be backwards in coming forwards. Remember, all questions are important. There's no such thing as a silly question. It might be a question that someone's burning to ask themselves. So after my preamble, thanks for bearing with me, it gives me huge pleasure to welcome the lovely Denise Wooding. So Denise will be sharing her decades of experience as a specialist pediatric occupational therapist. I always really struggle with everyone's titles. I'm really sorry. Denise is currently based at Alder Hey in Liverpool, and it's one of the top neuromuscular centres of excellence in the UK. So thank you, Denise, for giving us your very precious time this evening. We are all incredibly grateful. And so let's kick off. Denise, please take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I thought I'd do a bit of a presentation about occupational therapy and some of the popular topics I normally get asked about when I'm in clinic. So I've done a bit of a presentation, but I really don't want it to be formal. So at the end of each section, you know, if you've got any questions, then post them to Lynette and we can discuss them. Or if there's any, as Lynette said, that you don't want to discuss on this forum, I'm more than happy to answer an email. I can get back to you on that. So as Lynette said, I'm an occupational therapist. I've been paediatric OT for about 18 years. Previous to me working in Alder Hey, I worked in the community, so I got to see what it was like in the community as a paediatric OT and saw all the challenges there, and now work in an acute hospital in Liverpool. So that's a little bit about me. So the aim of this webinar was really to sort of say what the difference was between the role of the neuromuscular OT and the community OT. I also felt it was really important that we should discuss why posture is important for the children with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. I wanted to talk about wheelchairs and seating, and a little bit about splinting, because we'd had some questions about splinting, and also about the children in school, whether that be just starting school or transition into secondary school, and what reasonable adjustments we should consider and what to put in place. And then I thought it was important that we talked about arm supports as well, and why, you know, they can be helpful for a lot of our boys with Duchenne. Okay. As I said, if you've got any questions, or, you know, there's something you want to stop me when I'm in the middle, please feel free, because it's not a very specific, you know, presentation. I just used it as a bit of a baseline. So the role of the OT and why that's different to the community OT. So within Alder Hey, we offer neuromuscle appointments and clinics. And my role is really to do a baseline assessment of the children that are possibly newly diagnosed or halfway through their journey, as in Alder Hey. So I'll look to see what their abilities are, what their functional ability is, what they're having difficulty with, and how best to help them. I also participate in splinting with our hand therapists. So a lot of our children have resting splints for their hands, and I also help to make them with the hand therapist. I also have some seamless communication with the community OTs. So a lot of the community OTs who the boys with Duchenne might only ever see one child with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, so don't have as much experience. So sometimes it's nice to be able to communicate with them, to offer, you know, past knowledge or past experience of things that we've maybe tried and that they might not have thought about. I also help to signpost their families, so whether that's for equipment that they're not prescribed from their local authorities, and it may be to charitable places that to offer them for additional funding, so I might offer that. I also give advice and support regarding specific conditions, so not just Duchenne. As you can imagine, there's many more neuromuscular conditions, so I might offer advice and support and reasonable adjustments for school and education. I'll offer support at college, so a lot of the children with neuromuscular conditions want to participate in college, so I'll offer advice with that. And I also do many referrals, that whether that for community occupational therapists, or whether it's for wheelchairs or equipment or home adaptations. So my role with compared to the community OT is that I'm very much more signposting for the children that we see within Alder Hey. Okay, so I felt that it was really important to mention posture, and why do we need posture? So we need our posture in order to achieve functional activity, and a lot of the boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy can't always maintain a symmetrical position, so they're not always able to change their positions and adopt compensatory positions, and that then leads to pain and discomfort and pressure, and then ultimately reduced function. So I think it's important that we look at posture, because we want that equal distribution in our body, so that we don't lead to abnormal postures that then affects how they function in the activities that are meaningful for them. We want to protect the spine, and we're also, you know, quite weary of the muscle weakness, so the more that we can preserve that posture, then the better really for them. Is there any questions before I go on? No?
I'm just checking back with the questions that have come through, Denise, previously. I don't think there were any specifically on posture. There was positioning.
So I've got one about a bath and posture. So somebody had asked that they've got an Arjo Sovereign bath and wanted to ask about what posturally they could use. But they'd said they hadn't specified whether the child was tracheed or on a vent.
Unfortunately, the parent hasn't joined us for this session,
okay.
so we'll just have to...
So something that may consider, and obviously they would need to liaise with the community occupational therapist, because I don't know the child, so it's hard to suggest things, but one of the things that they may try is a Burnett body support, which would provide some additional support in the bath if they haven't got a supportive seat in the bath. But if they've got a bath cradle, sometimes the contraindications of the two aren't compatible. So without knowing more information, it's difficult for me to specify. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think that
was the only
was...
question on posture, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So wheelchairs, what do we need to consider with wheelchairs? And I think this is a really difficult thing, because I think when parents come to the conclusion that the boy needs a wheelchair, sometimes it's quite hard for them to accept, and sometimes a lot of the time parents might prolong that decision. And I think what we try to encourage is that having a self-propelling wheelchair, it sometimes is a positive experience, because it increases the boy's independence. So it allows them to get from A to B, and it gives them a bit more autonomy over their mobility. And when we look at a self-propelling, what we need to consider is that the child won't be as fatigued if they're using a wheelchair. So they could maybe use the wheelchair to get from A to B, and then to be able to do what they wanted. So for example, if they wanted to play in the playground at school, they could use their wheelchair to negotiate through the corridors of the school, to then be able to play in the playground. Or likewise, if they wanted to go to the park to meet with friends, they could use their wheelchair to get there, to then to be able to mobilise when they got to the park. So good posture is important when looking at a self-propelling wheelchair. So it can't be too big. There must be enough room for the wheels so that they're able to reach the rims of the wheels, and then be able to have a good motion to be able to propel from back to front. And they need to be able to make sure that they're sitting properly. So if a wheelchair is too wide, then obviously they're having to stretch a lot more. So they're using more energy, so they then become more fatigued. If the seat's too narrow, then that may cause pain and discomfort, which leads to pressure areas, and again, abnormal postures and an asymmetrical sitting position. If it's too long, children tend to slump forward in the wheelchair, so that will then cause increased pressure on their back, because they're having to compensate for the chair. If it's too short, then it gives pressure on the back of the legs. So these are all the things to consider when looking at a self-propelling wheelchair, that it needs to fit the child. And if something doesn't look right, then query it with wheelchair services, or if you're to purchase one, make sure that the child is sitting properly in it. Okay. Sometimes a good idea in order to see if a child is sitting properly is to see if their feet are resting on the foot plates and they're in a 90-90 position. Now that's not always achievable, and I've got diagrams after, but that's normally a good indication that they're sitting correctly. And also to see if a chair is too correct in the seat is if you put just two fingers behind the back of the knee, and if there's a gap between the edge of the chair and the knee, then normally that gives you a good idea of the seat depth of the chair. Okay, the backrest is normally in line with the back of the shoulders, and sometimes children may have additional supports called thoracics either side of the trunk in order to keep them in a nice midline upright position. They may also have laterals on the sides of the legs to ensure that the legs are in a nice straight position, because what we don't want is for the legs to go wide. Okay. Sometimes wheelchairs will have contoured backs to prompt the child. And then I also wanted to mention about power assist wheels. So sometimes you find that the boys struggle when they have self-propelling wheelchairs and not able to propel as fast or as quickly as they would like. And sometimes power assist wheels, we tend to use the e-motion wheels, and these have sensitivity so that you can reduce the amount of sensitivity needed, so they can either have a lot of effort or just a little bit of effort. Electric wheelchairs, things to consider: does it have a tilt in space? Does it have adjustable height? How's the child going to control it? Do they need a particular joystick or a golf ball? What's the hand dexterity like? Are they able to alter it? Does the parent have to have an attendant control as well as the child? Do they need a driving lesson so that they're able to negotiate from a spatial awareness perspective? And I think from a wheelchair perspective, I wanted people to think outside the box. They don't have to be a standard wheelchair. So we can have trailblazers, which are a trike that attaches to a wheelchair that they can go on the beach with. Or we've had wheelchairs where the boy has been sitting at the front and his sister's sat at the back. So that's something to consider. And I just thought I'd share a picture of one of the wheelchairs that we got. So this was a mum, I don't know whether she's logged on tonight, but this was a mum who had a toddler and also a son with Duchenne, and they couldn't go out together. So I supported them with the assessment, and she's now able to go out with both. So, you know, think outside the box with a wheelchair. Sometimes things that you don't think can be done can be. So it's just something I wanted to share with you. Also to consider having a tray on the wheelchair. Sometimes boys don't have, you know, supportive static seating at home, and the wheelchair might be the only thing that they can sit in to eat. And sometimes a tray is beneficial on the wheelchair. So there was a question.
Well, there was a question, yes.
Yeah. Someone said they've got they wanted a height adjustable wheelchair and wondered whether wheelchair services would be providing it so that he's in line with his peers. It depends on the wheelchair service. So more often than not, most families have had to access charitable funding. You know, things like Whiz Kids. It's a charity that supports children with electric wheelchairs. It depends. Sometimes wheelchair services will also provide a voucher to the equivalent cost, and then parents have either fundraised or provided the rest of the money to buy the wheelchair that they needed. It just depends on what area as to what's being agreed. So that was one of the questions for wheelchair. I hope that answers it.
Thank you.
So then the next thing I wanted to talk about really was seating. The optimal position for seating is 90, 90, 90. So if you can see from the diagram, hips are at 90, knees are at 90, and ankles. Can you see the diagram? Can you see it? Yeah. So if you think of it with seating a bit like Goldilocks, it can't be too wide and it can't be too narrow. Again, like discussed with the wheelchairs, anything that doesn't fit a child correctly will create an abnormal posture, and that will then lead to difficulties. So ideally with seating, we need to look at the pelvis. Is the pelvis symmetrical? And that's the basis for all our seating, that we look at a child's pelvis. So it needs to have a lap strap so that we can provide that postural prompt. We need to monitor the seating, again, as in with the wheelchair. If it's too narrow, it will cause discomfort. If it's too wide, the children will sit asymmetrically and they won't be supported. The upper limb support is important. A child shouldn't need their upper limbs in order to be able to sit upright. So armrests are important for a chair, and they shouldn't restrict in any way. They should provide function for the child. Because if the upper limbs are providing support to enable a child to sit, then that means that their trunk is restricted, and then that restricts what they can do and use their upper arms. Laterals again and thigh guides, as in like the wheelchair, are important for seating. And you can also get seating that has sit to stand, and it's very important to look at these chairs, because sometimes if a chair is sitting in a horizontal plane, it can send the boys off balance. So we need to be mindful of that when you're looking at static seating. Backrest again needs to be in line with the shoulders. Headrest, and also a lot of the chairs have a tilt and space facility. So if the children become fatigued or their head control needs a little bit more support, you're able to tilt the chair back without compromising their posture. So the pelvis will still stay at 90-90, but the whole chair would go back rather than the chair just reclining. And then these are just some chairs that we've used in the past or recommended in the past. The middle one is probably a chair that a child would maybe use in infants and reception, and it will just provide a basic postural support where their feet are flat on the floor. The purple chair is called a JCM Jupiter chair, and it's quite a nice chair because it's quite modular. It's not height adjustable, but you can get it in various materials. So a lot of parents like, because it's a bit like it'll match the settee chair. It's got head support, and also it has lateral support, and everything is modular and can be adjusted. And then the other chair at the end, I sometimes use this for children who are in secondary school because it gives postural support, but it looks a little bit more like a computer comfy chair. So a lot of the children in secondary schools are like that, depending obviously on the child's functional ability. Sometimes they will need more support by the time they get to secondary school. And there was no questions on seating.
There wasn't. Guys, if anyone's got any questions, just do pop them in the chat. Sam, have you got any questions at all about anything? Anyone got any questions? No. I must say that the wheelchair with the toddler attachment, I wish I'd seen that.
Yeah. And I think it's been, so we've got 2 families with that wheelchair. Obviously, you need to be mindful of the age of the toddler and from a stability issue. But yeah, so they're made bespoke, and they can have, you know, whatever colour they want and whatever material, and so it just means that they can get out as a family really and do the occupations that are important to them.
I think sometimes it's nice just to know that these things are actually available. To ask for them.
Yeah. Okay, so then somebody had asked a question about hand splints, when to introduce them, when's it worthwhile. Again, hand splints is another individual opinion really. A lot of the time when we see the boys that come in and we look at their hand function and look at their muscle weakness, sometimes they would benefit from hand splints. We normally do a resting splint, which provides a nice postural position for the boys, and we recommend that they wear them overnight to give their hands a good stretch. Obviously that stops the development of the shortened muscles, which then leads to contractures. Are they worthwhile? Some boys love them, and some boys really don't like them because they feel it takes away their independence. So there's different types of hand splints. We can either make thermoplastic, which is like a hard plastic that is made specifically for the boys to fit their hands. And we also have off-the-shelf splints. So sometimes the boys get quite bored of waiting for a hand splint to be made. And so we can have off-the-shelf ones which don't give as much adaptability, but will give the hands a good stretch. Sometimes parents say that the boys won't wear them or they won't sleep with them, and I think we have to benefit the pros and the cons. If they're not going to sleep through the night because they're wearing a hand splint, and then they're going to be fatigued and tired the next day. But if you can preserve the hand function and stop them from getting contractures, it's we can only recommend, and then it's up to the boys and their parents to weigh up. Okay, and then these are just 2 of the splints that we use at Alder Hey. So the one on the left well, it's my left, so I'm hoping it's yours, is the one that is an off-the-shelf splint. So it doesn't give as much adaptability for the boys. And then the other splint is a thermoplastic resting splint, which our hand therapist has kindly made for me. And this is made for the boys actually when they come into clinic. And it's also monitored at clinic review. Some of the boys also have their own hand therapists in the community, but they'll make their splints for them. It's important to monitor the splints to ensure that there's no redness, and also for size, because if they get too narrow, then they also cause pressure points. So it's something to be mindful of.
Denise, before you move on, please can you tell us the name of the black chair in the previous slide, please? I've had a question come in.
So it's a Smurthwaite Vango, I think, that one. And they will do assessments. So if they contact Smurthwaite, it's also good because it enables someone to transfer, and then it'll turn, so they can do a side transfer and then go into the desk. A lot of children tend to use them for sort of woodwork or cookery lessons when they've got to accommodate a higher desk. So yeah, I think it's a Vango, that one.
Thank you.
Okay, and then reasonable adjustments in school. So normally what we would suggest is if a child is about to start school or to transition to a different school, that an environmental visit is done, and that's to look at the environment to see what's the access of the school like, the entrances, do they need to be ramped, is there enough wheelchair access if needed, is there enough, are the doors wide enough? Will the child need any equipment or seating or height adjustable tables if the child is going to stay in their wheelchair, so that they've got independent mobility? Are they able to access the desks? Recording of information, are they able to record that information themselves by handwriting? Will they need to scribe? Do we need to look at laptop provision, or programs such as drag and dictate, where the child will speak and then text will be made for them? Do they need additional time in exams to do writing? Also to look at toileting, what's the access like to the toilet? Will they need additional equipment for supporting the toilet? Are they able to go into the toilet on their own, or do they need to be accompanied? Do they need help with their clothing? And also from a moving and handling perspective, so will mobile hoists be appropriate in the school, or do they need steel and track hoists? And I think all these things need to be considered before the boys start school, not when they start at school, because I think starting school is hard enough for any child, but particularly if the child needs a little bit of additional help, it's nice to have all these things in place before they
Denise,
start.
how soon before, let's say, I don't know, transitioning to secondary school, would you think about looking at these kind of aspects?
So probably the beginning of year 6, I would expect or hope that, you know, either the community team were able to support, to put things in place, particularly if needed any adaptations within the school. So, you know, whether there's a lift, will the child need a lift pass? Will they be able to access the lift on their own? Will they need to be accompanied? How will they open the lift? So these are all the things, and normally we'd also recommend you do an environmental visit, but then you do a visit with the child to see if there's any other issues that arise before school. Because what you don't want is them to start school and then there be a problem and it take a considerable amount of time. So normally, you know, particularly if a child's got an EHCP, you would expect during the review that there would be some planning for that transition. And ultimately also for college, you know, the same things apply for college. The earlier the better that they're able to. And I know that's not always possible given time constraints and, you know, service difficulties, but ideally that should be when it's considered the term before.
Thank you. Just as a little, sorry, just to interject, we had Martin's given everyone a good hint as well. For the black chair, he has a similar one called a Vela Tango, which is really useful, just to let you know.
Right, yeah, that's another company. Yeah, it's very similar as well. It's got the height adjustability as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then it was just really to talk about arm supports. A lot of parents tend to ask, when should we look at arm supports, and what is the benefit of them, and how do we access them? So historically, arm supports were normally assessed for by the community occupational therapists, and I don't know whether this varies on area to area. Some local authorities no longer fund them, and parents have had to look at charitable funding for them, and also for assessments. Some companies will come out and do an assessment with an arm support, independent of a therapist, and some require an occupational therapist to be present. And I think when we need to look at arm support is when the muscle weakness is affecting the upper limb function. So it may be that a child is struggling to eat, they're becoming more and more fatigued using cutlery, or maybe trying to drink, they're struggling to raise a cup to their mouth, and their shoulder weakness is not able to support the weight of their arm, so they're having difficulty raising that arm against gravity. And this is normally when we'd consider looking at arm supports. Arm supports have, there's very different types. There's one particular type that a lot of the Duchenne boys tend to use, and that involves two gutters that rest the upper arms in, and then the battery is attached to the electric wheelchair, and they use a button to facilitate them moving their arm up and down. The benefits are that they become independent again with activities of daily living, so they're able to clean their teeth, brush their hair, pick their nose, play with their PlayStation. They're also able to continue with their stretches, and the hand is then supported, so they've got more finger movements because their arm is supported, so they're not having to lift their arm up against gravity and struggle with that really. How to access them, I think first and foremost I would ask your community occupational therapist. Normally when children come to a clinic review, if we feel that they would benefit from an arm support, we would contact the community therapist first, and then if they're not able to do that, we could always support with an assessment. But again, I think it just depends on which area that you come from as to what provision is provided with regards to arm supports. And that's it. I think I've rabbited enough. That's mainly it. I was, if anyone's got any questions or anything that I spoke about that you're not sure or wanted me to clarify.
So we've, oh, and also for looking at the changes at the end of Key Stage 1 if the schools are separate.
Oh yeah, from infants to juniors. Yeah, yes, a lot are totally different schools now. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions at all? Or anything they want to add? Any experiences they've had of really good equipment? So I guess we did have some questions about housing, I think, Denise, didn't we? We had a question about adaptations and hoisting and things like that, which would be really interesting to find your take.
I think the question was that somebody was getting adaptations, that they've waited a considerable amount of time, and the local authority are loaning a ceiling track hoist, but parents didn't want a ceiling track hoist in the kitchen and the living room, and had asked for a mobile hoist and said, is this normal that they're allowed to have both? And again, it depends on the local authority as to what their policy is, as to whether they would prescribe both. the question was though that they wanted a hoist transfer from the kitchen to the living room, so it was just to be mindful that a hoist isn't to be used to transfer from room to room. It is only for transfers, so to transfer from bed to toilet or toilet to chair. It shouldn't be used as for moving a child from one room to the other. So again, it depends on the local authority as to whether they will prescribe to. Sometimes there's been issues where a child had a through floor lift and they've had ceiling track hoists upstairs but not downstairs, so they have had a mobile hoist prescribed, but it depends on each individual authority as to what's agreed.
And we've also the mum said thank you, that's really helped. We've also had a question on housing from a dad who he wants to find out, I guess, timescales for housing and how can they push for it to go quicker. They are classed as overcrowded in their house. There's 8 of them in a 4-bedroom house. Do you have any kind of tips or hints about getting them rehoused more quickly in your experience?
So again, it depends on what area they're from. Some areas have what we call property pool, where a family would bid on a property if they're looking for a local authority. What I would probably suggest is that they contact the local authority and ask what's the best way for them to consider housing. If they're looking to purchase a house or whether they're looking to be rehoused, there are different authorities that they can register with, and normally they will be on a point system, so depending on what points you have, so what disability you have, whether you have more occupants in the house than you should, and then they can bid on this property, and normally the local authority will advise when the property pool is, and you can normally register with a few authorities. So that would probably be my suggestion.
Thank you. They also asked, and I know just from listening to a number of presentations over the years at the Action Duchenne conference, they've asked about the benefits of hot tubs, what your opinion is. I know it's a really hard one. Do you have an opinion? Is there kind of a line that you guys follow?
I think from the benefits of a muscle, it can be very relaxing for children to use a hot tub. I think obviously you have to be mindful from a temperature perspective, but I don't recommend them. Obviously you wouldn't have overuse. I don't know what the technical line is for using them, whether muscle stretching would be a lot easier in a hot tub. I don't know. If Dr Spinty's on, he might be able to enlighten me.
Dr Spinty, I'm hoping you don't mind if I take you off.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I think hot tubs in general, families report, and boys and young adults report positive effect of it. If you look at research trials, there aren't any, but I think in general people report that immersion in warm and hot water is beneficial and they feel better for it. The only thing I would say is to check with or your respective team or consultant from the cardiac perspective as to whether there are any signs of cardiomyopathy, difficulties with low blood pressure, for example. If children are on ACE inhibitors like perindopril or lisinopril, then I would just double check with the medical team. And if you start using the hot tub, just as in a normal bath, immerse yourself slowly and see how you respond, so that you don't feel dizzy or even faint. So that would be my recommendations. But I think in general terms, most families, most boys, young adults report benefit and feel it relaxes them, as Denise said, and they feel it's beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Spinty, while you're on, was there anything else that you'd like to add to what Denise has spoken about at all?
Yeah, thank you, Denise. It was a really good, comprehensive presentation. I think one thing which has bugged us for many years is that families have been able to secure seating or wheelchairs privately or via charities, but then they are not followed up with regards to the seating. And what Denise has highlighted, it's so important, isn't it, to adjust the seating as the boys grow up. And that's one of the big difficulties, of course, also financially, because boys get a growth spurt and they need a new seating arrangement in the wheelchair. And one of the things we've tried in various settings to address is to see whether wheelchair services could provide the seating base, or if the charities could provide the seating base, but then wheelchair services would be able to adjust the actual seating itself. And this is one of the problems. We have really not made any progress in the last, 15 years. And that would be something if we could work together with you as a charity and us as clinicians and physio and occupational therapy teams to move this forward, because in terms of cost effectiveness and it clearly would be a lot easier just to have the seating base, for example, come from a charity with height adjustment and tilt and space facility, which a lot of the wheelchair services from the NHS point are not able to provide. But then for the wheelchair services, really just to focus on the seating, that would be a major step forward, not just for individual children, but nationally. And I think if we could work together and think about it in more detail, that would be really helpful.
Thank you so much.
I think it's really difficult as well, because a lot of the boys tend to stay in their wheelchairs a lot more now because that's their mobility. And I think sometimes if it's not providing that postural support, it's a little bit more tricky if they're going to be sitting in it for long periods of time. So if you imagine if you're on an aeroplane flight, you'd adjust your seating position to make yourself more comfortable, whereas some of our boys can't do that. And if it's a chair that's not posturally giving them the support, then that will lead to abnormal postures and then more problems later on down the line.
Denise, I've got a question about standing frames. Again, is that another difficult question, or is that?
It's not a difficult question. Normally, the physiotherapists tend to deal with the standing frames,
Okay.
but they can ask me the question. I'll try, but it's not something I've got specific experience in.
I didn't know if that was. This is where it's difficult, I think, as a Duchenne parent, to know where one member of your team starts and the other carries on. I think that's a big
I think
trouble for us.
Yeah, and I think that is probably difficult for parents. I think what's so good about the team at Alder Hey is we're very multidisciplinary, and because we have got so many different professionals from all different areas, it complements each other really. So they can ask the question, I can try and help if
well, it was just me literally just wondering, just because I'd seen someone I think someone's son on this week has got a new standing frame, and I just thought, that's, what age is the best time, and is there a particular, I don't know, stage in the Duchenne journey when it becomes more appropriate?
But I don't know. It would be the physiotherapist. Obviously standing is good for the boys because it gives them a good stretch. It also gives them a different position and a supported postural position, but I wouldn't know when you would introduce the standing frame.
Thank you. We had a message in from Martin as well, just saying about secondary schools he started to go to open days in year 4, which was recommended by his Senko, and that meant that obviously they could go a few times to have a good look.
Oh yeah, good idea. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you know, from listening to families, you know, regularly, see if you agree with this, you know, the kind of the change in patterns and things that need to happen for secondary school to work is really stressful, because you've just recently gone through this really, Sam, haven't you?
I have, yes. And I actually went to visit the 2 schools that I had in mind for my little boy for a few years ahead of actually him needing to go, just so I could get a real, and when they did open days as well and summer fates and things like that, I'd found myself bobbing along just to get a feel for the place, and it did really help when making the decision.
Yeah.
And also involving him as well, coming along with me with the visits as well, so that he could get a feel for it and have his say.
And I think it's so overwhelming for a child anyway to start in a new school that
Definitely.
the easier you can make that transition, you know, the smoother it will be.
Yeah.
So, and I think for the parents too, because I think once they go to second school, you sort of lose a little bit more of that control that you did have when you were in primary school. So yeah, I think it's really important to feel comfortable and ensure that they're as independent as they can be with their peers.
And also too, you know, I know my mum's on, and she's an ex-teacher of 30 odd years, and she said the more time the schools have to implement things, the better. Yeah, which makes perfect sense, doesn't it? If you know which school you're going to go to, or you know,
Yeah.
which college as well.
Yeah, and you know, we expect teachers to know everything, but you know, some teachers may never have heard of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and you know, sometimes we need to educate them and get them used to it. You know, we're expecting them to teach our children, but they don't know what the condition is or what. So, you know, it's quite nice that you can educate them so that they can help the child to achieve their full potential.
Denise, what I tend to do at the beginning of every year, or certainly more often than not every year, sometimes every term, depending on what the teaching staff is, I'll go in and I'll sit with them and I'll give them an overview of what Duchenne is, what Samson's situation is now, you know, what he likes, what he dislikes, because obviously teachers can read a lot of things online, but until you actually hear from the parent, everything, you know, we all know Duchenne is so different across, you know, people have present so differently that there's no kind of one size fits all, really. So, and that seems to work for us. It seems to get them on board a lot earlier, and also they seem to be more open to hearing from the team, like the OTs, like the physios, and all the really important people in the child's care that's going to be going in to the school.
And I think that's important, that you get all the different professionals on board, so that the school then do have a bit of a link should they have any questions. So I do think that's important. What we've introduced with some of the children that we've seen in Alder Hey is a 1-page profile. So it's something that tells you a little bit about the child, their interests, what they like, what they don't like, and that's been quite popular, not just within neuromuscle, but a lot of the occupational therapists in the hospital have used that with children, and that's been quite effective within schools, because it gives them a bit of a voice when they maybe sometimes can't say what they want or they need or what upsets them. So that they've been quite good as well.
Brilliant. Does anybody else have any questions or anything to add? Martin said that his son loved seeing the Bunsen burners in secondary school. I can imagine. That's like, what is happening? They're allowed fire.
The highlight of my son's was when they burnt a jelly baby in the science during one open day in a school, and that told him he needed to go to that school.
Amazing. Okay. Here we go. Actually, my mum's put something else in it as well about schools. Actually, she didn't know about Duchenne until Samson's diagnosis, and most teachers, you know, knew very little about a physical disability, and certainly very little about, kind of learning differences as well, which, as you say, if you haven't come across it in your professional life as a teacher, potentially, you wouldn't know. I've got my little friend sitting here.
I can just see a foot every so often. Hello.
Oh, thank you so much, Denise.
You're welcome.
If anyone's got anything to add, just put your hand up. If not, we can hopefully see you guys all soon. It would be lovely to hear your thoughts on other sessions that you potentially would like to hear on OT, on the OT side, and actually so we can actually home down on something more specific, so that Denise can perhaps share your expertise. Denise, you were telling us about the sensory, which was fascinating beforehand.
Yeah. So I just feel that a lot of the Duchenne boys tend to be struggling with some sensory issues, and a lot more parents seem to be highlighting that, particularly when they come to clinic at Alder Hey. So it is something that I'm particularly interested in. So it would be interesting to hear from other parents as to whether they've got similar issues, and then how we can best. There's a research potential there, so yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much to you all for joining us. I hope you found it interesting. If you've got any further questions, do let me know, and I can pass them on to Denise. Dr. Spinty, thank you for your information as well, and Denise, thank you for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.